Hey, what's going on everyone? My name is Ben and I'm 21 years old, living in Melbourne, Australia, and I've had Crohn's disease for just over 4 years now. I thought I would make this video to share my own experiences dealing with this autoimmune disease in the hope that it might help some of you out if you've just been diagnosed, or maybe you know someone who's in your household, like a kid or a partner, and you just want to learn a little bit more about it. So I plan on making a number of different videos over the coming months, so talking about things like medications, supplements, diet, and overall just Crohn's management advice, I guess. So definitely stay tuned for those. And if you have any things you want me to cover in future videos, then feel free to leave me a comment down below. So this video will be more of a brief overview of my diagnosis, my initial symptoms, medications I've been on, and my progression to where I am today. As I've mentioned, I've had Crohn's disease for 4 years now, and it's definitely not always been easy. There are always lots of ups and downs, as I'm sure you probably are aware, but there are definitely ways to get through it, and hopefully I'll be able to share some of them in this video. Currently, however, I'm in a really good place. My guts are really good, and there's definitely signs of progress. So hopefully as time goes on, I'll probably get into a more remission stage. So I guess over this time, I've had countless blood tests, MRIs, x-rays, and of course the dreaded colonoscopies. So I hope this video is reassuring to you and perhaps some people who might be watching this video a few years down the track. I have a really strong prediction that more and more people will be diagnosed with Crohn's and IBD related illnesses, whether that's a result of modern diet or just more people becoming more aware of the disease and going to get tested, who knows. But with that said, you definitely aren't alone, and it's more common than you know. So back in 2017, it was around January, was when I first started noticing the symptoms of Crohn's disease. So I was feeling a bit nauseous, I was a bit fatigued, I was losing a little bit of weight, but nothing too crazy at this stage, and overall I just wasn't feeling too great. Initially, I actually just suspected it might be like a tapeworm from something I ate, or even a form of food poisoning, which is pretty common these days. This discomfort then lasted around a week, and I began going to the toilet a lot more than I normally would. So I guess on a normal day, I would go to the toilet like once a day, and I was going around 3 or 4 times, which, you know, you had those days where you go a lot more than you probably would normally. Well, this kind of happened every day for at least a week, so I started to get a little bit concerned. And then one night, I remember I was just like in my room watching like TV or something like that, and it felt like my stomach had like acid like brewing inside of me, and I couldn't think of anything else but that pain. It was like I had tunnel vision, obviously metaphorical tunnel vision there, but still it was like I couldn't get my mind off it, and it was just there. And my mind was just thinking about, how's this pain going to go away, and will it go away? So remember, I just decided to take like a paracetamol or like a Panadol, and the pain went away for a little bit. I went to bed, and the next day I actually went on holiday for a week. And funnily enough, I had absolutely no symptoms whatsoever, which was pretty strange. My guts were fine, I had no symptoms, and I was pretty much back to my normal self until I got back to Melbourne, and the symptoms literally, I don't know if this is real or like a placebo thing. I swear, like as soon as I landed and I got off the tarmac, my stomach just started growling, and I knew I was in for something big. So just for a little bit of context, at the time I was 67 kilos, so that's kind of what I am today. And I'm also 6'1", so that's a fairly light weight for my height. Anyways, my symptoms just gradually worsened, and I lost like 7 kilos within the span of like 1 to 2 weeks. So from 67 down to 60, in that amount of time definitely wasn't a good thing. So it was here that I knew that something wasn't right and I probably should get it checked out. I will also add that Crohn's does run in my family like it does in many other families, so we suspected that it might be the case. So we went to the doctors, who then referred me to a specialist, and then things started to get moving and I was getting a lot more help in order to get treatment, but at that stage, my symptoms were still getting worse and worse. I began to feel like super fatigued, I couldn't concentrate, and my face just looked like really skinny and like gaunt, and I didn't look good at all. This is probably due to all that water lost over that time, and probably because the food I was eating wasn't being absorbed properly, so I was kind of at an extreme calorie deficit. So eventually I got into a gastroenterologist, we took some blood tests, and I booked in for my first colonoscopy, which if you've had one before, you will know just how scary that first one is. So I don't think showing photos of my insides is the best way to introduce myself, but maybe in a future video, if you want to see some of my results, then I will be happy to share that information. So once the results came back, it was determined that I did in fact have Crohn's disease, and there was inflammation in my bowel. And to be honest, I think it was the small bowel, but it was over 4 years ago now, and I don't really remember, and even then, I don't think it really matters because it's the same treatment either way. There were also a few polyps, which I don't know if that it's even relevant, but they were there and they were removed. So yeah, it was a mild case of Crohn's disease. So I was actually really happy that they were able to work out what I had in order to get me treatment that I needed. Pretty much immediately after, I was placed on prednisolone, which is the steroids, and I was also placed on 2 grams of Pentasa Mesalazine, and things started to calm down and I was on my way back to being my normal self. I was so happy because I had all this newfound energy, my bowels were good, and I was going really, really good. I was just about to start the school year, so the worry of being sick and starting school were gone, and I was feeling just enthusiastic about what was to come. I can't remember my exact dose of the steroids because it was 4 years ago, like I mentioned, but I'm pretty sure I was on 100 milligrams at one point, and I think at a max I might have been on 150 milligrams. So as I mentioned, I was also placed on 2 grams of Pentasa. So they're those massive horse tablets, but you can also get them in the granule form, so you can just mix it in your yogurt. But for me, I just prefer the tablets as it's a lot more easier to take and it just takes less time. So this is the way it was for like almost a year. I was on the Pentasa and the steroids, and as I said, things are going really good in terms of my Crohn's symptoms. But as most of us do, I just hated being on the steroids, and it definitely got to a point where I was so sick of taking them, I just wanted to pull back and just to see how my body would react. My mood was just all over the shop, which could have been a result of, finishing high school and the stress that comes along with that. But even then, my face was so puffy. I just looked like a marshmallow. I felt so fat in my face, even though I was probably in the best shape I've ever been in at that time. So it really was quite conflicting in terms of having an ideal body image. I also began having really bad reflux as a result of the prednisolone, so I had to take Nexium to calm that down, which I really didn't like because it's just more tablets that I had to take. So at the end of the year, I had another regular colonoscopy and there was still inflammation there, but it definitely was a lot less than the first time. So there was definitely light at the tunnel and things were starting to look a little bit better. So gradually the steroids were pulled back and my body held up pretty well, thankfully. My symptoms were still there, but they were definitely manageable provided I was eating right and not drinking too much alcohol. I'm definitely gonna make separate videos on both diet and alcohol, so definitely stay tuned for those, and I hope to go into a bit more detail on those areas. So now it's 2018, which was my first year at university. So I had really no symptoms, or maybe they were just minimal. I was doing pretty good, my energy levels were pretty solid, and overall I just felt pretty much normal once again. But around September, I actually went on holidays and I noticed my symptoms came back immediately after I got home, which is very similar to the last time. Initially I had really, really bad constipation, so I wouldn't go to the toilet for like 4 days, and then it kind of just completely relapsed and I was diarrheaing for almost 2 months straight. So around November, I decided to not put up with it anymore. So I got another colonoscopy done and it showed that the inflammation had returned, and it was probably best that I go back on the steroids just to calm things down a little bit while I try and work out what other drugs I can go on. At this stage, I was still also on the Pentasa, so I was so frustrated that things weren't progressing as I liked, and it seemed like that strict diet I did was for nothing. So that whole summer, which was the start of 2019, as I mentioned, I was on the steroids and the Pentasa, and I was feeling pretty good in general, but once those steroids really kicked in, I knew some things were about to change. My face was a lot more puffier than the first time, and I felt like I lost confidence in general, and especially my motivation for like the gym and going to uni, that fell away completely. But slowly enough, my symptoms gradually improved and I was actually placed on Imurin, or Azathioprine as it's medically known, which aims to treat Crohn's as well as eczema and psoriasis. So I kind of was aware that it could help me out a little bit. So I think I started on 100 milligrams and then I went to 150. And the only symptom I ever had on this medication was I got this really, really bad like butterfly rash across my face here. And it made it really, really hard, especially when I had such a puffy face from the steroids. I just looked like I was out of breath constantly, or I was blushing, which is pretty embarrassing to be honest. Anyways, once I brought this issue to my doctor, I got to see a dermatologist and she recommended that it might be because of the steroids as well as the Imurin, which makes your skin more sensitive to light. So I would go outside for like 15 minutes during the winter and I get sunburnt. So I had a burnt face plus the puffiness, and yeah, it didn't really make for a good combination. So eventually I was off the steroids and my Imurin was just starting to kick in, as it normally takes around 2 or 3 months to do so. And I had another colonoscopy and they found that my inflammation was actually a 1 out of 10 this time. So that was a really, really good result. It also meant that I was on track for the next line of drugs. So that was either infliximab, which is an infusion, or Stelara, which is the injections. So this did mean I had to change specialists, which did take some time. But anyways, a few months passed, and that brings us to the start of this year, 2020. So here I was able to drop the Pentasa completely. I lowered the Imurin to 100 milligrams, and I was just about to start these Stelara injections as well. So these injections are actually all self-administered, and I never had any problems with needles. So it's actually really, really convenient. Every 8 weeks, I just grab 2 needles and just inject it into my stomach, and it only takes like 1 or 2 minutes to get it done. Compared to going to the hospital and finding a park, paying for parking, going there for like 2 hours, that's just way more of a hassle, so I'd much rather do it in my home. Especially because it has been COVID the whole time. I really wanted to avoid the hospital and a doctor's surgery. So yeah, as I said, having it at home was really ideal. So that brings us to the present, and I've got minimal symptoms. I have really consistent bowel movements, and my mood's regulated, my energy levels are pretty consistent, and overall I'm feeling really, really good. Obviously there are days where I don't feel too great, but this is mainly due to me not eating right. So if I eat a lot of junk food the night before, or if I drink too much alcohol, then I'll definitely feel it. But all in all, I think I'm doing pretty good and way better than what I expected. I've also made the switch to a gluten-free diet in the last couple of months, which I really think has helped me out a lot, and I'm really keen to continue that in the future. So fingers crossed I am able to maintain these results, and hopefully there's more progress in the years to come. But as always, I do expect a hiccup here and there, as I do think that's a realistic attitude to have. So I mentioned a lot throughout this video, and there were definitely parts where I probably brushed over or didn't really go into enough detail about them. But as I mentioned at the start of this video, I'm going to make a lot more content regarding diet, medication, supplements, alcohol, and just general advice videos regarding Crohn's disease. So if that does sound appealing to you, then please consider subscribing. And as I said, if you have any thoughts or like recommendations or even experiences with Crohn's disease, then I would definitely love to hear it. So feel free to drop a comment down below. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.